Okay.
Hello, take 4,000
Moving on
of
into
Chemistry
the
of Life
exciting
Part 2.
water properties. Hang on to your
It's not
hats
really 4,000,
or
but
put
it
one
is
on
take
because
6.
we're talking about water,
So,
whatever. Okay, moving
hopefully
on. Let's
this is
look
gonna work out
at
this time.
water. Of
All right,
course, the
so let's
Earth
pick it up, pull out
is
your notes.
two-thirds
The
of it is
2.1
covered
notes,
by
dust them
water.
off from a few weeks ago.
And water
And
is mainly
let's start talking about
is
energy.
found inside of
Now,
cells.
energy,
So it makes up
energy
of
by the letter
us,
E.
of an
So
organism's
tell
body.
we're
It
talking
makes
about
up
energy.
70 to
There's two main types of energy we're going
95%
to talk about. Potential
for
and
of
kinetic
organism's
energy.
body
Now think
for
about
all
potential
life
energy
forms on Earth.
when
So that number
think about
varies
it in
based
terms
on
of
the
like
type of
people. When you
organism.
hear people
And
say,
so
"Oh,
we're
we have
mainly
so much
all water.
potential," that means they haven't
All
done
right,
it yet.
and like
They
I
just
said,
have the ability
mainly
to
all
do
water,
it.
and Andre Agassi here has lost a lot of it.
Potential energy.
All right, remember our little polar covalent
waiting to be
bonding that we
used,
talked about, the partial charges here,
bonds.
partial positive, partial negative.
In the chemical
So
bonds.
water is this
All
polar molecule. It has
Kinetic
a positive
energy
end
is the
and
energy
a
of
negative
movement,
end.
of motion.
Oxygen has a
And so
slightly
kinetic
negative charge
energy
because it's
is
more
where,
electronegative. It means it has a stronger
when
hold
those
on
bonds
the
are broken,
electrons.
and that
Because it
energy
has
is
8
released.
positive
So the
protons.
energy is actually
So it's
from
got
the
a stronger
movement
hold
of
here.
the electrons.
And the
So when
hydrogen has a
electrons are
slightly
stuck in that
positive
bond,
charge.
it's
And it's
potential
less
energy, and when those
electronegative
bonds
because
are
it has
broken,
this
then the energy
weaker
is
hold on the
released.
electrons because it
Whoops,
only has one positive
All right.
proton. So it has less.
Now,
So it doesn't
the
have
potential
as
or the
strong
stored
of
energy here
as a charge.
is
So water's
the energy,
polarity
like I said,
allows
in the
for
bond. So
it
here is
to
one
make
formula
hydrogen
or
bonds
one
very easily.
depiction.
And remember, we said a hydrogen bond is a weak bond. This is
That
going to be real
line
important.
here is telling you
So,
that that's a bond. And
the polarity
we're talking about
also makes
two
it possible to
different,
conduct electricity very well.
we're talking
Water,
about
we
two
call it the
different,
magic molecule. I mean, it's amazing the
electrons.
properties
So that would
that
be
water
represented
has.
by two electrons right
And
there.
good thing, because
I'm not sure why
we're
that's
made
not
up
showing
of
that.
mainly
There we go.
water.
So the two electrons.
The other thing that this
Or
polarity,
we
these
could
charges
have,
allow for, is for one single water molecule to bind to
the,
4 other water molecules at one time. And we're going to take a look at that.
discard the
All right,
invitation.
so
There
here is this hydrogen
or
bonding
we could show it
that
in this way,
occurs
with the
between
sharing
the
of
water
electrons.
molecules. So here's the
All right,
central
so
one.
potential,
This
stored
hydrogen
energy,
bonds to that
and
oxygen.
kinetic
This
energy is
oxygen
energy in
bonds to
motion.
that
The bonds
hydrogen
have been broken.
and to
So
this
this cloud
hydrogen.
out here,
And
remember we
this
said that
hydrogen bonds to that oxygen.
in the nucleus
All right, so
are the
4 outside
positively charged
molecules
protons.
bind to it.
the neutrally charged.
Okay,
There's no
so
charge,
let's look
so
at
it's
some other
neutral.
properties.
Neutrons.
Cohesion.
Those are in the
Okay, we
nucleus,
were
and
just
then the
talking about
negatively charged
cohesion when we're talking
electrons
about
are out here.
covalent bonds. Co
In the
means
cloud.
together. So cohesion
There's some things
is
that you need to know about
where
the periodic
water
table in order to be
molecules
able
are
to,
binding
have a
to
little bit better
other
understanding.
water molecules.
All right, so
they're
atomic
binding
mass,
to each
recall
other.
from before, the
All right?
atomic mass is the
So
number of
they're in the
protons
same
plus
place.
the
They're
number of
binding
neutrons.
to each
So
other.
atomic mass
So
is
this
protons
property
plus
is made possible
neutrons.
because
Okay?
of these hydrogen
And
bonds.
the atomic
And
number
this is real important because
is
we're going to look
the
at
number
water
of
moving up a
protons.
plant.
All right, so
And
atomic
because,
mass
I mean, have you ever
is
wondered if the
listed
water comes
underneath
in through the
typically
roots
underneath the element.
and gets all the
Like
way
in
to
the
the
case of
tips
carbon,
of the
its
leaves?
atomic
Well, how does
mass
that
is
happen?
12 point
There's not a
something,
pump
something,
inside
something.
of there.
And then
And
the
one of
atomic
these
number
concepts
in this
here, or
case,
the
is shown on
concept
the
that
upper
does that, is
left-hand
this
corner. Depends
principle
on
of
the periodic
cohesion.
table.
Now,
Sometimes it's
cohesion
above
doesn't
the
work on
element,
its own.
but
Oh, there we go.
but it
Water needs
is
to get to the
in,
leaves for photosynthesis. So the
it's
cohesion of the
definitely-
water
it stands
helps.
out, so you know. Okay.
And water is
period.
going to
So these lines
flow
across,
through
like
what's
that
called
green
xylem
line,
cells.
all
X,
of those
Y,
elements
L,
are
E,
from
and
the
xylem
same
cells.
period.
And so the
And
cells
these are
in
of
the
same
plant,
period. And as
that
you move
water is
along
going
the
to go
period,
flow
there's
through them.
different
Now, cohesion doesn't work
qualities
on
that
its
that
own.
element has.
In order to get water
So
from the
an
roots
easy way
to
to
the tops
remember
of
the
to the
periods
tips of the
is
leaves.
that when you read a
there's
sentence, you
also
read
a
it
property called
horizontally and it ends
adhesion.
with a period.
And think about
Oh,
adhering.
Isn't that great? That's such a great
Or an
way to remember it.
adhesive bandage.
Because
when you think
then
of
you
an
move to the
adhesive
columns.
bandage, that
You
band-aid
move to
is
these
sticking to
vertical
what? It's
areas
sticking
here,
to
and
you,
those are called
hopefully.
columns.
And so it is
an
sticking to
individual
itself.
column
If it's stuck to itself,
family. So like here you have the
it's not gonna
boron
work really
family
well.
and the carbon
And so
family, nitrogen
adhesion
family,
means
oxygen
these
family,
water
halogen
molecules
family, noble
are
gas
going to
family.
stick to
All
something
these here in the
else.
center are the
And so,
transition metal families.
In this
and then we have
case here, the
alkali
water
earth
molecules
metal
are binding to the
families and
sodium or the
alkali metal
chloride
families.
ions.
And those all
And,
have very distinctive traits.
In the
to
property
those
of
elements.
adhesion, if we're looking at like a graduated
All
cylinder,
right.
then
Let's talk
we
some
would
bonding.
look at it
All right. Now,
in the
there's three
sense
main types.
of
There's more than three types of bonding, but the
the
three
thin,
types that
narrow
we're going to
tube,
discuss
and
are
then
covalent, ionic, and hydrogen.
so if we drew like a
Think of the word
graduated
co,
cylinder, whoops, if I
for
could
the
draw one, there we go.
prefix
So
co,
cohesion, the water molecules are
means
sticking
together.
to each other.
And so-
Adhesion, remember that little thing?
in a
What did we
covalent
call
bond,
that? That was a meniscus.
These
Now, notice it
molecules
sticks
are
to
gonna
the
share
sides like that.
electrons. Remember,
That's sticking to the
they want
side.
two in their
Is
first shell,
adhering. The water
in their
molecules
second-
are
I mean, 8 in their
adhering to the
second
side
shell,
of
8
that
more in their next
graduated
shell.
cylinder. So
In order to
between
be
it
happy,
sticking
they
to
want
the
that outer
sides
shell
and
full
sticking
in
to
order
each
to be
other
happy.
through cohesion
So,
and
carbon
adhesion
has an
sticking
atomic
to
number
the
of
sides,
6, which
water
means
is
it has
able
6
to move
protons.
up
Well, in a
through
neutral atom,
through those
protons
ion
equal
cells
electrons. So
into
with 6
all the way
protons, it's
up
gonna
from
have
the
6
roots to
electrons.
the leaves.
So,
All right. Now we
it fills
have
up the
this
first shell of 2. Fills up the second shell,
other
but it only
concept
has
here
4
called
out
surface
there.
tension.
Carbon is not happy at that
And
point.
this
No, hydrogen's
is,
not
that's a
happy
water
either.
strider.
Because hydrogen's atomic number is
You know,
1.
they just scoot along the top
Can't
of the
do a
water.
whole lot with
And they
that.
can do that
And
because
so-
that water,
and it wants
because
to
of
have 2.
these
So
properties,
this hydrogen
that,
came in and covalently
it
bonded
creates
to
like a
this carbon.
skin
Now this
on the
hydrogen's
surface.
happy.
And
It's
so
got 2
these
in its
water
outer shell.
striders, because of
But
their
carbon's still not happy
physical
with only 1
body,
hydrogen.
how
So
it
it's gonna
spreads
bond
out
3
and
more hydrogens
evenly
in
distributes
order
its
to be
weight,
happy. So this
or
is
its
what it
mass,
looks like on an electron.
it's able to
type
skip
format,
along
and
right
this
on the
is what
top
it
of the
looks like
water.
in a molecular format.
And again, this works because of these
All right.
hydrogen bonds.
Now there's a particular type
All
of
right.
covalent bond called
Now,
a polar
water,
covalent bond. Think of
helps
poles.
with temperature
The
regulation.
north and south
here on
pole
Earth.
of a magnet.
So water
They
is
have
the only
opposite
substance on
charges.
Earth to be
Or
found
think
in
about the
all
north
3
and south
states,
pole itself.
3
They're on
states
opposite
naturally:
sides of the
solid,
Earth.
liquid, and gas.
So a polar
So it's found in
molecule
all 3.
means that it has,
And of
it's
course,
a charged
we
molecule.
could see
A non-polar
the
means it
gas
does
phase
not
here in the
have any
clouds, the
charges.
liquid in the
Important
water,
part,
and then
important
the
point to
solid
make.
would be, of
All right?
course, in the
Now,
polar ice
this little
caps and
squiggle
the
here,
frozen water and the
it looks like
glaciers
a
and things like
like
that.
a S.
Water can act as this
That
huge
denotes
heat
partial.
piggy
That
bank.
means it's got a
So,
partial
such
charge.
as when the
So this is a
sunlight hits
partial
the
negative
ocean
charge.
and
So
other water
oxygen
bodies,
has
and
a
the water
partial
heats
negative
up
charge.
slowly
Hydrogen
as it
has a
absorbs the
partial
light
positive
energy. So it
charge.
heats up,
All right, so
it absorbs
still
that light
covalently
energy.
bonded,
And again,
but
that's important.
it's got
That's
a
made possible because of these
partial
hydrogen
charges,
bonds.
so it's a
So
polar
it takes a
covalent
tremendous amount of
bond.
energy to break all 4
right.
of those hydrogen
Now, like I
bonds
said,
at
this
once
is the structural
and turn
formula.
liquid
So when we see
water
it with its
into a
bonds
gas.
in
So
here,
it takes
that's
a
called the
lot of
structural
energy to be
formula.
able to do
When we
that.
see it written like
And
this, it's called the
this
molecular
isn't
formula.
this is an
And so
important
that
worldly
is
effect to
methane
keep
gas,
the temperature
and
of Earth
that's
stable.
CH4.
You don't want it
You'll also
changing
hear
a
that
whole
called the
lot.
chemical
And so,
formula as well. And that's
The
just showing
water
that there's one
absorbs
atom
the energy of
carbon,
sunlight
four
so we don't
atoms of
fry, and then releases that same energy at
All right,
night so we
the
don't
second
freeze.
type of bonding
That's
that we'll look
why
at is called
you'll
ionic
hear
bonding.
near water,
notice within that
especially
word
when I grew up in
ionic,
Ohio outside of Lake
there's the
Erie,
word ion. And we
right on
talked
the edge
about
of Lake Erie,
ions
we would say we
before.
have
were
lake
talking about
effect
sodium ions and chloride
weather.
ions.
And that would mean
So,
that we would
we
have
said sodium. The first
when the water,
shell
when the
has
lake
2.
would finally
the second shell is
freeze,
full with 8,
it would
but
stay
sodium has
colder
11 protons.
longer
So that means
because
it's gonna
you're
have
still
11
getting the
electrons.
cold from that
Well,
water
fills up 2 in the first
versus
shell, 8
when
in the
that water
second.
heats up.
That only
It
leaves 1
takes
in the
you're
outer
actually
shell.
warmer
It's not
for
happy.
longer because it takes a while for that water to
Way
cool down, so
easier
it keeps things warm around
for
it.
it to donate that.
So
it donates
and
that
kinetic
electron.
energy here.
In this case,
Oh,
it
so
gives
here's
it
our
over chlorine
solid,
because
liquids,
chlorine
and
is missing
gases.
1 electron.
And here's our,
In its
like we
outer
said, the 4
So that makes
hydrogen
both of
bonds
these
to
very
break at
happy.
the same time requires
But
a
notice
lot
this
of
has a
energy.
plus and this has
Now
a minus
heat
now.
is this
That's because
total
sodium
amount of
has
kinetic
11
energy. Remember, we said
pluses,
kinetic
okay?
means
So it
energy
has
in motion.
11
So it's the
positive.
total amount of kinetic energy in a substance. So there's so much energy moving through the
Now, it
metal
only
that it
has
ends up
10.
glowing. That's what causes it to
negatives.
glow.
If we added those together,
And
we end up with
so heat
one
is the
more
measurement
positive
of
than
the
we have
total
negative.
amount of that kinetic
Thus,
energy
we get
in a substance,
Na
where the
plus.
temperature is the
Same thing with the
intensity
chloride
of all
ions.
the
We
heat
have
in the substances the
one
molecules
more
move. In other words, the
electron
faster
over
they
here,
move,
then we
the
have
hotter it gets,
protons,
and the slower they move,
so we end
the
up
cooler
with
it gets.
a
So ice
positive
cubes
charge.
and
I'm sorry, a negative charge.
cold
'cause
drinks,
we have
the
more
hot drink
electrons than we
molecules
have protons.
lose energy as they
All
try
right,
to warm
here's
up
just
the frozen
showing
water.
you the
thereby
ionic
causing
compound,
the
the
drink to
structure
cool.
of salt. It forms this crystalline
All right.
structure and how they all
So here's the
interlink
ice
together
versus water.
there. All right. The third type of
All
bond
right,
we're going to
now,
talk about is a
evaporative
hydrogen
cooling.
bond. And a
When
hydrogen
we
bond is
sweat.
extremely important.
Putting
This is
heat,
the,
energy into water
the
causes the water
bonding
to
that,
evaporate and carry
notice
the heat
here, the
away
hydrogen
from
is
the body.
bonded to the nitrogen.
And so it
Hydrogen
provides this
bonds are
cooling
weak
effect. So
bonds.
that
This is
water
real
comes to the
important
surface,
when we're talking,
and when that water
and when we
evaporates
look at the
off of our
properties of
skin,
water
it
coming
cools
up. That's
us.
a hydrogen bond that occurs
Now,
there.
wind increases
And
the
we're gonna
effect
see
of
why that's real
cooling
important.
by carrying the water
right.
vapor away from
Some
you
things
faster.
to know about chemical reactions.
And so when
On
you're
this
sweating
side
and there's
of
a
the
breeze
arrow, those are called the
blowing or there
reactants.
is
Those are
air
like the
conditioning hitting
ingredients in a
you,
recipe.
you feel even
Over here
colder
are the products.
or cooler
Think about
because
that.
it's going
the
away from
product
you
is what you end
faster.
up getting.
The
So on
humidity,
this side
which
of the
we're
arrow,
very
where this
well
is
familiar
pointing
with
to,
that here
now
in
don't
the
be confused,
South,
because sometimes
the
you don't-
humidity
you don't
is
always
water
have two
vapor
over
that's
here
in the
and one
air.
over here. You could have one over here, and then it
And
breaks
so
down into two over here.
It
or
decreases
you could have
the
all different kind
effect
of
because
reactions.
water
Just think
can't
arrow.
evaporate in
This
the
side
air.
of
It's
the
already
arrow are
full of
reactants.
water
This
vapor.
side of
Think
the
about
arrow
this
are
concept
products.
we said of saturation.
That's all
So
we
if
have.
the air is
Oh,
already
so
almost
sad to
saturated,
go, but
it's
I
not
have
going
3
to
more
easily
videos to record
absorb too
tonight.
much
So,
more.
I will talk to you in
All right.
just a few minutes. All right. Have a great night. Thanks for tuning in.
The expansion of water as it freezes. Water has this amazing, amazing property that right before, you can see liquid water, it has this bond right here. So what happens is right before water freezes, these bonds expand. They get larger. I mean, have you ever wondered why ice floats? Ice is more dense than water. It seems like it's heavier than water. So why does it float, not sink? It's because of this property, because right before ice freezes, just right before water freezes, it expands out, and when it does so, it allows it's less dense at that point than the water. So it condenses down to 4% Celsius. After that, the colder it gets, the more it expands. So life was and still able to survive under floating ice that occurs at the poles during winter. If it didn't expand like that, then ice would freeze from the bottom up, and we would be in trouble, because it would it would freeze and then sink, and then anything below it would be in trouble. All right, so, and that's water floating. Not sure why there's that picture. So life below the water, it can still exist under there. That's all we're going to do for tonight. And then we're going to move on to part 2. I know you can hardly stand it, so I'm going to record that now, because I know you're going to be like, I can't even go to bed. I'm so excited to hear this next video. Have a great night, and thanks for tuning in.